All right, everyone, we've made it to the finale. This is the number one hand. We will be discussing it, and I'm sure that Berkey can't wait. It's one of his greatest moments of his career. His career has been on for fucking over 15 years.
This hand's going to go on my Wikipedia page. Right underneath the Berkey got stacked by Garrett Adelstein in a $450,000 pot, aces versus kings.
That was pretty unlucky.
That's literally the only hand in my Wikipedia page.
That hand actually is there?
It's literally in my Wikipedia. Yeah. Whoever, shout out to the German who made my Wikipedia page, whoever you are.
Well, having Wikipedia is nice.
I was shocked. The day I found it, I was astonished. Like, wow.
You really made it. And let's talk about this hand. So, first let's talk about pre-flop. So let's play the hand.
Okay, this is one of our favorite hands. Gonna start with an open here. Wouldn't mind, even if I'm 3-bet, I can defend very easily.
$200 deep, I'm gonna play around here with Matt.
All right, we have a pretty weak hand here with 9-4 spades, but like, you know, we're hood as fuck, so I'm calling.
All right, so you open with Queen Jack suited of hearts. Nick calls with 10-8 offsuit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to come along with the 9-4 suited.
Yep.
You should have won this pre-flop.
I've already made $100 more than I should.
Yeah. I don't see how...
Nick won the battle. We were deep. He had the button. Flick it in.
I also think this was around those times where people just defended the big blind a lot.
Yeah, for
So-
sure.
Okay, fine. We've moved on. The board is going to come down Queen 4-5. And let's see what the players say.
All right, so we flopped a decent amount of equity here. Bottom pair, no backdoor flush draw. We're actually just gonna lead here and kind of leverage Berkey here in the middle. And he's probably gonna respond with a raise a decent amount of time, but we don't care. We only have bottom pair, so it doesn't matter.
So this is a really easy spot. It kind of monkey wrenched what my plan was. Nick's been playing quite volatile, and this board texture should nail his flatting range. He's gonna have a lot of 6-7 suited, 7-8 suited, 5-6 suited, some suited aces with backdoors. Basically a lot of available equity for him to have c-bet, 9s, 8s, 7s, things that he wasn't really gonna check back when check to that I would be able to get in a very layup check raise against. With Christian leading now, we have very little concerns. Sure, he has pocket 5s and 4s. He also has 5-4, maybe even the offsuit combinations. With that being said, given my backdoor equity, I'm considering a raise here. I don't really think anything bad can happen. But along the same lines, if I just flat, yeah, I don't like it as much because I can't raise really on the 3 of hearts, 4 of hearts, 6 of hearts, 7 of hearts, or 8 of hearts. And those are really important cards for me to be able to press my equity with. I don't want to just shift to realization. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue here through a raise, treating this as just being top of range.
Couple of interesting things going on here. I really don't think Chin leads out big. He's got a pretty wide range peeling from the big blind, and he's got 2 aggressive players behind him that are probably going to be stabbing pretty often at this spot. At the same time, I really don't think Matt raises strong with me behind him and probably perceiving Chin weak, so I actually think they're both relatively weak, and I'm going to try to pull off a pretty insane maneuver, which is to basically float naked, and I think it's a spot not a lot of players would be able to balance bluffs, and for that reason, I think my range construction is going to be quite effective for what I'm trying to do, or at least my perceived range construction. So I'm just going to flat.
All right, whatever evil intentions we may have had have just been fucked. So even though I think Berkey can have a decent amount of bluffs here, like ace, king, jack 10, etc., with all those backdoors, when Nick calls here, it's going to be pretty strong, and we only have bottom pair. And even though I may have had a little evil intention, I'm just going to fold.
Oh, you're dangerous, Mavic.
Yo, the kid let out. What's going on? All right. That lead's kind of trash.
Yeah, to say the least. I don't know what you thought about that board was going to afford you a lead, but
I think that jack kind of looked like a 7.
you mean the queen?
Oh, sorry. You see? It's just confusing. That queen looked like a 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't defend that lead. I just didn't want to check fold.
Yeah, this is what being stuck looks like, kids.
I didn't want to check fold. I was like, if I lead, I get to realize my equity more often.
What's funny is if you would have just checked, I would have fucked with Nick in a different way.
Yeah,
because he still would have fought for this pot. I may not have ended up stacking him, but he definitely would have stabbed, and I'm pretty confident I would have gotten in a nice small check raise there.
So then the action's on you. And you have Queen Jack of Hearts, pretty high-ranking hand on this board. I don't think I represent too many nut hands here. It's pretty unlikely I'm leading sets. Really unlikely I'm leading 4-5. Really unlikely I'm leading a queen that's any way decent, like King Queen.
Mm-hmm.
So your hand just like very much beats my range. You choose to raise. And now things get weird.
Sure.
So Nick makes the assumption that I don't have anything, which is correct. But then he makes the second assumption, what I think is kind of dangerous, in that you have nothing because I seem to have nothing.
Right.
But he also has nothing.
Right.
Like,
and it's kind of bad nothing in the sense that a lot of my nothing that would be, well, maybe that's not true. I guess 10-8's better than like King 10.
why? Because you're bluffing with King 10?
Well, I could be bluffing with King 10, but I could certainly be bluffing with King
Jack.
X that wraps around the queen. So like King Jack, Ace King, Ace Queen, or sorry, not Ace Queen, but Ace Jack, stuff like that. So yeah, like I think like King Jack and King 10 are probably.
Yeah, but like he could just have like a different hand, like a set, like a 4 or a 5 or a 7-6 or 7-8.
Well, he'll definitely have the open enders. So I think he was being a little ambitious in saying that like like most players won't have bluffs to balance here by cold calling. Cold calling is definitely non-standard.
Could also have Ace 3, Ace Deuce.
Right. But yeah, it's like, he can find hands for sure. I'm not surprised to see him do this. The big incentive, because if we're heads up, I think my incentive is to just call you, despite the fact that I feel like I'm way ahead. I just kind of want to like keep your bluffing range in, see what happens.
That's what I was hoping for.
Sure.
So I could turn 4.
Right.
The bottom pair trip draw would have stacked you.
Yeah, it's strong. But
Don't dismiss the bottom pair trip draw. It is when it comes in.
it's ambitious.
Yeah, it's one of the
Even 9-4 is better than 8-4 here.
the 9.
The 8's pretty dirty.
Listen, I'm talking about the 4. Okay. The bottom pair trip draw is a draw that people don't really talk about that often. I know you want to talk about high level shit, but some of these people are on YouTube and
Well,
they're trying
there's
to
a reason why they don't want to talk about bottom pair trip draws. When you're entering it through the leading tree, it's not really all that pertinent.
Listen, if you're out there and you understand the bottom pair trip draw, we're on the same page. But continue.
So the big reason I'm raising there obviously is to deny Nick his equity. It sucks whenever he's folding out 8s, 9s, 10s, things like that. But it's a really good event whenever I'm able to deny 7-6. Even some of the gut shots like Ace Deuce, Ace 3. But it's also not that big of a negative event if he's going to choose to cold call or 4-bet some of those hands. I think my hand has enough properties where it's going to be able to continue as a multi-street bluff catcher if necessary. And when he chooses to cold call, like I know he thinks that just reps a set, but like not in this spot.
Right. It's also likely that he's 3-betting like a fair amount of King Queen, a fair amount of Ace Queen as well. Yeah. I mean, it's hard.
He's just repping too narrow.
It's hard to rep a set.
Yeah, he's just repping too narrow. I mean, if it's like Queen 7-6, I think he at least has a lot more hands.
And a lot more turn equity distribution in terms of also bluff equity.
Right. Right, because that's the thing on as you'll hear on Queen 5-4, like a turn 6, a turn 7, a turn 8. Those are like gin cards for me now once we've entered it through this paradigm, because he's just not going to have very many nutted hands. He'll improve his equity a lot. And sometimes he'll even improve to 2 pair. But like, especially when it's a heart, I'm going to have a lot of equity now.
All right, so let's go to the turn.
Next cold call here is very devious. I think he's still really wide with his floats, and that is my gin card. This is going to appear to give him range advantage and should shut down my hands, like if I have kings, aces, ace, queen plus, etc. He's rather free now to take a hand like 7-8, 7-6. He could have 4-6 of hearts. He could have ace-4 hearts for the nut flush draw. And then his weaker floats, like, I guess like 8-9 of diamonds, 8-9 of clubs, 7-8 of clubs, etc., etc., etc. They just don't have enough showdown value. So this card kind of sets him up for a 2-barrel. I'm certainly going to start with a check. And depending on if he overbets or not, I'll be check calling 2 or just check smashing through.
Matt's checking here. I think I'm just gonna bet pretty small. Basically, if his range is containing showdown-driven hands and air, with maybe a few nut hands sprinkled in, I really don't think I have to risk more than less than a half pot size bet here. I'm in a position where I can always size up river to maximize, and I just feel like the right sizing for a spot where he may be relatively imbalanced by just giving up is just a cheap bet. So I'm just gonna bet 300.
All right, so let's stop there. Obviously, the turn isn't over, but I think there's a good spot to pause. So the turn comes the 7 of hearts, and this is perceived to be a stronger card for Nick's range rather than your range, but I'm not sure if that's true. And reason being, he doesn't have too much 6-8 suited. 7-5 suited is kind of rare.
I mean, I don't think either of those are true. He has 10-8 off. So I do think he has coverage on this card for sure. But more specifically, his cold calling range should be very dense to sets already.
Mm-hmm.
So like he shouldn't have any 1 pair hands really.
Right. So the 7-5 suited is less prevalent.
Yeah.
Even though when we see 10-8 off, so he probably definitely has.
Right. I don't know if the 5 is a heart or not, but if it's not,
I thought it was. That's why.
okay. If it is, then he could still have
like 3 combos.
Right. He could still have 3 combos of 7-5. If it's not a heart, then he only has 2. But basically, like anything that peels has to have pretty high implieds. So it either should already be made being 5s or 4s, or somehow miraculously queens, or it should be hands that can improve to really strong nutted hands in a situation where I'm pretty dense to 1 pair holdings. So now we're talking about like pair plus backdoor, gutties, open-enders, things like that. So I definitely think that it's a turn. I think the turn equity distribution favors him on this card for sure. But particularly whenever I have hearts, like I don't think I do so well in the 7 of spades. I don't think I can play this pot this way.
Right.
Just because of the fact that like when I'm wrong, I still have pretty decent upside whenever it's a heart.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's a spade and I'm wrong, I'm just dead.
Got it.
And that's pretty asymmetric.
So let's see how you do play this.
So I really like the sizing that he chose. It seems to be an induction size where I think he thinks I would fall for this with 1 pair type holdings, and he can take a cheap stab at it with a lot of his range. Now, here's the thing. With that bet and my call, there's going to be about 1,400 in the pot, and I'm going to have 1,600 or 1,700 behind, so about pot. The clarity on the river is actually insanely poor. So it's really difficult for me to go call on a 6, 7, 8, or 3. I don't really think he's necessarily going to bluff a 10, jack, queen, king, or ace. Also, the ace could fulfill some of his hands like ace 6 of hearts, ace 4 of hearts. So I'm actually going to check raise. I'm definitely going to check raise. I'm just trying to determine if I'm shoving or making it more of a bluff heavy size. So I think if I make it 750 here, with 1,200 behind, he'll think he has fold equity with both his equitable hands and his nothingness. And I just realized I'm actually deeper than I thought. So I actually have like 2,700 here. So I'm gonna make a more standard check raise size to 1,000.
900 is the bet.
I think Matt's check raise makes very little sense without a very tight range of hands. I did pick up a gutter. By betting small, I sort of opened myself up to this. It started out as an insane maneuver to begin with, and versus one of the only players at the table who I think is capable of playing a check raise bluff range here, I think it's just time to ship it in and go to bed. If Matt wakes up with a set here, more power to him. I think it's a really unorthodox, unconventional way for him to play a set, and he deserves to get paid if he did do that. I think it's a very strange way to play an overpair with the type of range that I'm required to felt at point of all in with how this action went. The ranges are pretty tight. I think raising an overpair would be an overplay unless he thought I was about to do something that I'm about to do, so I'm all in.
Players all in.
All in.
All in.
Call.
Call. Remote.
Wow.
Got him. I think it's about time to put him to bed.
That was a very legendary statement.
His analysis is actually like really good and really right.
Yeah.
For the same reasons why
But
I
he
can't
thought that
do this.
you would be overplaying like kings.
But like I can't, and he's right, because for the same reasons why I struggle here on the turn 7 of spades, I struggle on all 7s now whenever I have kings, right? Because like when I'm wrong, I'm dead.
Right.
So like I just have to take more of a bluff catching strategy and just check call the small bet, and then
So the value of kings to you here is less than the value of queen jack of hearts to you.
Yeah, well, the mistake propensity is just much greater. So the margin of error that we have with queen jack of hearts is just significantly more robust, which gives us more flexibility. That's why I focused on the backdoor aspect of it on the flop to begin with. It's like, okay, well, these properties alone allow me to be more aggressive with this holding, where if I just have kings or aces, I'm incentivized to be more aggressive, but I may have done it in a manner that just ensured that Nick got shut out of the pot. So I might raise like full pot versus your lead and just try to get you isolated versus, a poor equity driven range.
It seems unlikely though that Nick enters the pot at any reasonable frequency. Like once it goes bet raise, his normal requirements to enter the pot are pretty high.
Yeah, I don't know. I just had a pulse on it where it was like we were pretty deep. He had position. We all knew that you had shit was the thing. Yeah. Like that
So
everybody's lacking.
You owe me money.
Sure. Everybody's lacking the clarity of, or the context, I guess, of the situation. If you go back and watch season 1 up until this point, I think this was episode 4. For 3 episodes, Chin was punting. Some punts, some unlucky, whatever. But you were buried and stuck as bad as I've ever seen you stuck. So like, we knew that this just wasn't gonna show up as a hand.
Yeah, that's fine. It happens once every 2 years.
Yeah, no. I'm not even picking on you. I'm just saying, like, once that layer of information is available to all parties, the strategies just drastically shift.
Right.
And now that all of a sudden makes it look like I'm just c-betting large and Nick is choosing what to do versus a large
Well, you're
c-bet.
raising large, right?
Well, I'm saying, like, it distills down to the fact that, like, somebody put in dead money that is never going to continue on this board, and now Berkey's just making effectively a larger c-bet.
Yeah, agreed.
So now his range kind of widens out a little bit more, and I don't know. I just had a pulse on it. I was very heavy into the anticipation factor of that.
Yeah, it seemed like as if when Nick called, you were like, "Oh, Nick has evil intentions on this board." Like it seems like that was immediately what you said.
I just think I could recognize a lot of availability to it, even though I didn't know he's playing offsuit variety of connectors. It's just there was a lot of 9-8, 8-7, 7-6, pair plus, all these types of hands that definitely don't want to get shut out of this pot, which is a big reason why I was incentivized to raise. So like when I recognize a big target of hands I'm trying to deny equity to, and that person continues, it's not that far of a leap to assume that like, oh, well, he's continuing with that wide net of of his range that I'm trying to shut out.
My lead is so bad. It's just so bad. Like It's
Everyone
fine.
has a low light moment,
It's
man.
fine, man.
That's nothing.
Yeah, I mean, if at the end of the day, it's fine.
Yeah.
I'll live with it. All right, well, if you all enjoyed this, there is much more of this at tv.solveforwhyacademy.com. 4 full seasons. I promise you, I don't lead all the time with bad hands.
Season 2 and season 4, I think, are your crowning moments.
Season 4, I'll never get invited to another game. I really wreck. All right, well, I hope you all enjoyed this. Top 10 hands. This is number 1. If you like more, hit us up. Hit me up on Twitter at Christian Soto TV. Hit up Matt Berkey. Tell him, hey, I really like Queen Jack of Hearts. Fucking killer check raise. How do you check raise the 7 of Hearts? Aren't you scared? At Berkey11.
Just put it in the comments, man. We're trying to get some traction.
Also put it in the comments if you like calling with 9-4 suited. If it's in your blood. I don't like folding it anymore. But before, there was excuses back in 2015. Wait, 17. I was calling it in 2015 too. But in 2017, everybody's like, oh, pot odds, you can call suited hand. Now, I realized something. Wait, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No. You could only call if you can make a straight.
Sure.
4-8 suited? I'm in there.
No, that's what you had.
I have 4-9.
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, then I'm fine. Get in there. 4-8 suited, that's good. All right, well, with that said, we're out of here.